my energy and desire don't actually always match what my inner critic is telling me I need to be working towards.
If we can consider what our inner critic is like and whether that person is helpful to us or unhelpful, I think could be very important.
A lot of the students I see, some of the things they will say to each other, I'm like, that's not something your friend would say to you.
Right.
Like, that's mean. And why would you want to be around somebody who's mean all the time?
Mm-hmm.
And then you realize, dang, I talk to myself that way.
Right.
Why would I want to be around me?
Right.
I don't know. Would we schedule our time to go out to eat?
No.
I don't think so.
This is Sistas Declassified, the podcast where
Taylor
and Taryn,
your virtual sisters, share experiences, insights, and of course the juicy secrets that never leave the sister circle.
So shh, listen up. The Declassified convos are starting now.
Welcome back to Sistas Declassified. We're real life sisters who decided to start a podcast instead of letting our inner critic get the best of us.
Before we get started, don't forget to subscribe so that you can get your weekly dose of declassified moments.
So let's get into our declassified moment for today.
No filter, no fluff.
If your inner voice isn't hyping you up, it's time to change the MC. And I'm saying that today because I want us to reflect on what our inner critic says to us. And what do you think your theme song would be?
Mine just be yapping. If I'm being real, it'd probably be something a little depressing. Like a little bit like woe is me, but like also very passionate. I'm trying to think of a song right now.
I feel like I have mine.
Go for it.
Before Kendrick came out, my inner theme song was He Still Loves Me, Fighting Temptations. If you know, you know. Mm-hmm. If you hear Beyonce, just think about it. It's a great song. Do you know that song?
I don't. I feel like could you give us a snippet?
Yes.
Give us a snippet.
And it was a good song for me. Because no matter what situation I was in, I was like, you know what? God still loves me. Even if no one else does.
Okay.
So it's my like pick me up song, but also my I guess what was me song. Can't play it that loud. Do you remember that movie?
I watched it quite a lot. It's been a minute.
Well, I used to love that movie. Now that I have I tried to remove that as my inner theme song for a while though, because
why?
It's positive in that he still loves me, right? But it's not positive in that most of the song is like, I'm not perfect. Yes, I do wrong. I'm trying my best, but it ain't good enough. Is the words to the song.
Got it. So not totally uplifting, but maybe realistic.
It was real. It was real for me for a while, but now I switched to GNX because I deserve it all.
Amen.
And so I sit and I listen to that all day long because he literally, and he says it in his interview, he gave us affirmations. So if you can sit and listen to Man at the Garden, I think is actually what it's called. And have a little affirmation moment because he's like asking for emotional stability. He's asking for sound mind and sound body, right? Tranquility. Mm-hmm. He's asking for his financial stability. He's asking to be placed in the right rooms. There's so many things he's like affirming over himself in that song. And I find it super important and it hypes me up now.
I love that. I have the song in my head, but I need to look up who it's by. So give me a second. So I have lately been listening to like new school gospel, which I've really been enjoying. I think on the same tip of you, like wanting to have some more positive affirmations in my music, and just knowing that my inner critic can be harsh. I've been trying to like put songs on repeat that are the opposite of that. And one of my favorite new school people is somebody named Caleb Gordon. He's a young person. I don't know. I think from Florida. But one of the songs that I enjoy is it's called Way Too Blessed. And it's like, I guess I could play it a little bit.
If you'd like to.
It's just a good reminder that like there are things that maybe aren't going right, but like I'm very blessed. And so at some point I gotta move on from the things that stress me. I think I'm just
stop the pity party and start saying I'm blessed.
I mean, okay, calm down. I think I'm just a very passionate person, and so I can be very quickly moved to like strong feelings. And usually those strong feelings are more in like the, I don't want to call them negative, but I guess negative.
Party.
It's not pity party. It's more like, that's how you describe it. That's how you view me. And that's fine for you. That's not how I view myself. So I think it's just a good reminder to like let go. It's like, I'm way too blessed to even care, way too blessed to care about the drama. I got my roof over my head. I got family and friends that care about me. I have good things going for me. And I'll share my little gospel playlist because it's got some good bops on there. And
sounds like you need to add "He Still Loves Me" over there.
maybe. But I've really honestly been enjoying a lot of the new school gospel people. No Big Deal, Madison.
Do you
Ryan.
know Corinne Hawthorne? Because that's my girl.
Of course I know Corinne Hawthorne. Now her I know. But I think I've just been finding it helpful to, maybe I'm getting old too, but I've just been, I won't say avoiding some of the other like hip hop rap music, but I just don't relate to it as much anymore. And sometimes I need a little like feel good Meg Thee Stallion, like hype myself up with the Glorilla here and there.
Right.
But I can't relate to their lifestyle. And so what I like about the new school gospel is that it has positive uplifting vibes, but it also has like new school feel in terms of the music, like the beats and stuff. And so I appreciate that. It's not all
it
like,
sounded like Rod Wave or something, the beat.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's not all like somber. Take me to the king.
See, I love that though.
No, but there's a time and a place.
There's always a time for Take Me to the King.
Okay.
If you ask me.
Sure. I just mean that I'm not, sometimes that can make me
Yolanda
sad.
Adams. See, I think I just like to sing. So whichever song is going to allow me to belt it out in the car or wherever I am, that's what I'm up for. So like Way Too Blessed doesn't work for me because I can't sing that.
But it gets stuck in your head, and for me that's a good thing because I'll just be like, wait,
I mentioned this before, but for other people whose maybe inner critic is harsh or it's a little bit harder to transition to a better thought, I've been listening to the Beautiful Chorus, and I think I mentioned that on this channel before, but all of their songs are affirmations, and it's just to beats. It's 5 ladies, they come together and like harmonize. And it's like the songs are only 3 or 4 words in their affirmation. So like one is just presence and ease. And then another one is like, thank you for what is it? Thank you for pleasure, thank you for peace, thank you for love, thank you for something me. But all of them are just affirmations, and they're really nice. They have 3 albums, I think, 3 or 4 albums. I have them all on my phone. And I play them in the morning. So like if I don't feel like going to work today or whatever, I really like the presence and ease one because it's like, get out of your head and be present. We got to go to work. So let's be present and let's ease our way into this day.
Right, because you're not going to go. And I mean, every once in a while, every once in a blue moon, you might decide today I'm not doing it. But that's not every day. That's not most days.
That's not most days.
Yeah.
But I brought this all up because I think if we can consider what our inner critic is like and whether that person is helpful to us or unhelpful, I think could be very important. And how does your inner critic shape how you feel about the world?
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. It reminds me, honestly, of a lot of the students I see, particularly like middle school, high school. And some of the things they will say to each other, I'm like, that's not something your friend would say to you.
Right.
Like, that's mean. And why would you want to be around somebody who's mean all the time? And then you realize, dang, I talk to myself that way.
Right.
Why would I want to be around me?
Right. Well, and your inner critic usually comes from that time of your life, right? Your formative years is what kind of shapes how you see the world. And I had to think about, like, I think my inner critic, the hardest part that I have is I used to hear a lot of you're not satisfied. You're never satisfied is what I was told a lot. And so now in my adult life, I have to, it's very hard for me to decide if somebody's doing enough for me or not, or if I've done enough for myself or not. Because it's like, yes, I've achieved these goals. Should I be satisfied here?
Right. Does that mean I stop? Am I content? What does it mean to be content?
What is it exactly? And now I'm not sure, and I don't trust myself, because when I was young and knew what I wanted, it was like, how dare you want more?
Like, this isn't good enough for you, that you should be happy that you get XYZ.
Yeah. And so now in adulthood, either I can't ask for more because I'm like, well, you should be satisfied, bitch. Like, you should be satisfied with whatever you got. Or I'm extremely unsatisfied and I'm like, well, you should be doing more.
Right. Like, it's on you that you don't have it.
Yeah. And so it's like, it's shaped my whole perception of the world, but also not, because now I'm like, which way is the right way?
Right. And the sad part, I mean, sad but good part is, it depends.
Well, but that's where my songs came in, right? Of like, the he still loves me, of like, I'm not worthy of all of these things that I claim I want, but God still loves me, so it's all good. Or on the flip side, now I have my GNX and I'm like, you know what? Fuck everybody. I deserve it all. Everything I want, I deserve it.
Amen, amen.
And that's okay. And so I think I had to accept that that was okay. Like, all the things that I want, if they're not hurting anybody, what's wrong with wanting it?
Right. Nothing. Nothing. It's between you and you.
Exactly.
I think for me, when I think about like my inner critic and where it may come from, some of it stems from, I think in a lot of spaces in my life, I felt judgment. And not necessarily judgment on me, but I could see other people being judged. And I did not necessarily want to be viewed in a way that could be negative. And so, like, I think about growing up in the church, for example. There's a lot of talk about sin and who's doing wrong. And it's very easy to spot it in other people, and you wonder what people can spot in you, right? And then I also think about my life as a gymnast and how much of it was, you're striving for the perfect 10. So you can't misstep, you can't get anything wrong. And even in school, right, we're striving for perfect grades, we're striving for A's, or at least in our household, that was something that we were encouraged to work towards because it was believed that we could achieve it.
Right.
And I think sometimes I will allow other people's belief in me to sometimes help me rise to the occasion, but other times it just makes me feel very like full of pressure. And it's similarly to you, it makes it hard for me to differentiate what it is I want versus what I think society or whomever thinks I should have or should do or be capable of. And sometimes I just want to be.
Right.
Like, I don't want to actually be striving or pushing or looking for anything. I just want to exist. And I think that can be challenging for me to just like exist, because it feels like I'm being unproductive or not being perfect or not moving towards the life I guess I used to think I was supposed to have, or like what I refer to the American dream, quote unquote, a lot, because I feel like that was a part of our indoctrination as young people. And so I think I'm like, where do I check off on the list of the American dream? Do I have the house, the job, the car? Well, I got my version of it.
I mean,
right?
You have all of those things.
I have my version
now,
of
ownership of your home, right? Now is a different thing. But
here,
you do have a home, and you do have a job, and you do have a husband. Like,
see, she don't like how I talk.
Well, it's not that I don't like how you talk. I'm just like, reframe the reality is that you did achieve the American dream aside from owning your home.
Sure. Yes.
And realistically, a lot of us don't own our home.
Right. Especially in the Bay Area.
Even people three generations older than us, not generations, but like 3 decades older than us is the word I was looking for. Even people 3 decades older than us haven't achieved that yet.
Right. But I think in some ways I was made to feel like I was exceptional. And when I don't feel like I exemplify that, I feel like I'm not where I'm supposed to be. And so I think a lot of my inner critic is around this exceptionalism that I think I felt like I had as a child or as a young person, that I'm like, damn, I'm kind of average. And maybe I'm not. I don't know. But like sometimes in some areas of life, I feel average, and that can be unsettling because I never used to feel average. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
And then also like, what is wrong with being like everyone else?
Right. And I mean, that's where the judgment comes in of like, well, that's nice for you. Happy for you. You should be happy with that. But am I happy with that? Don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's like assessing what will actually make me happy. Because now, like I've pointed out, if you have all the things besides owning a home, is that the only thing that's going to make you happy?
No, probably not.
So
then that will come with its own things, its own stressors, its own responsibilities. But yeah, I just think my inner critic can sometimes be shooting for exceptional, but my energy and desire don't actually always match what my inner critic is telling me I need to be working towards.
Yeah, same. Well, it's just easier to point out all the external factors that are impacting your life and like why you're not where you want to be or why the world is the way it is without thinking about what you're actually doing to create the world you live in.
Right. And whether or not I actually even want those things. So I guess we're similar in some ways in that we are working to trust ourselves to understand what would make us satisfied or what we desire, while combating maybe a voice that says, you're not doing enough.
But I think also it's because we did so much. While we were young, we were doing so much. And I don't think we recognize that because most of our peers that we spent the most time with were also doing so much. And so I think once we slowed down, it's like, oh, this is regular life.
Right.
You actually like don't have to do stuff all day and you don't have to be busy from the time you wake up until the time you go to bed.
Right. And things can be handled, secured, squared away, and you could like exist and chill.
Yeah.
I say I want that. I still don't really know how to do it fully.
Well, I think you have to enjoy what you're doing while you're chilling. Because like I think what is actually happening is you don't want to chill, but you don't know what else to do.
Maybe.
So, I mean, that's a different topic for another day, I think. And like getting back to our inner critic, I guess, is maybe just in how it holds us back. And considering would you talk to someone else that way? Because I think my challenge with my inner critic is that it's not very direct. It's not me like saying, I hate this about myself, or I hate this, or I don't like this, or things like that. But I think it's more in the like, wait until you do this until you can put yourself out there. Wait until you do that until you can show up in that space. It's like a lot of benchmarks I feel like I hold myself to before I can allow myself to do something else or be seen. So I think my inner critic holds me back from like being too much.
Because you felt like you were told you were too much?
Kinda.
I think mine's definitely the not nice friend. Like, this sucks. Oh, you're dumb. And it's not always like you're dumb, but it's like, that was dumb. Well, that didn't work out how you thought. Well, I guess you didn't know what you were doing here. Like, yeah, it's a lot of like, how could you not have seen this coming or prepared for this? And I'd spend a lot of time like trying to play chess with life, thinking a few moves ahead, and not in the same way as you, in that like I feel like every step has to be perfect, and so I'm not necessarily looking for a benchmark, but I'm in my head a lot about how I move, how I'm perceived, and how things will play out. And not necessarily like for public consumption, but like in general for me, because I guess I think a lot about how I'm perceived. And so I've come to like, unfortunately, like do that almost naturally.
Right.
Like everything even in talking about this podcast, like the way that I talk is very, I don't want to call it calculated, but I definitely think before I speak most of the time. And sometimes that can be off-putting, but usually it leads me to saying what I mean, which is nice.
Right.
But
it gives you a thoughtfulness of like, oh, she pauses and she thinks things through. which is what like they would say is a good way to communicate, right? That's effective communication. But maybe isn't your real thought.
Right. It isn't always like the first thought that comes to mind. Like I think Bashan, my husband, hears the first thoughts all the time. Mm. And sometimes when I'm speaking freely at home, I'm like, I am not very nice. Like there are so many thoughts I keep to myself because like, I really think about, do people need these thoughts in the world? But like, I'll be at home watching TV and Bashan will look at me because he knows I have a thought about how that person looks on TV or what they said or whatever. And I'm like, I'm doing this all the time in my head, just judging.
See, I think in those instances, for me, I'm not judging. I think I do deal with the perception thing. I think we all do, right? Of making feeling like we want to be perceived correctly. I think I think the judgment is a family trait. Unfortunately,
I know.
Yeah. That's all I'm gonna say about that.
But I have a few people in mind too, because
a lot of people. That's why I just said, you know what? I was going to say, you know, you might get that from, and then I went down the list and realized it's a family trait. So
we just have thoughts, like opinions. We're opinionated people.
Yeah, and it's not like we will never go up in somebody's face and give that opinion.
No,
but we are very free to share our opinions in the confines of our family.
We just have,
which everybody probably is,
and I think it goes back to maybe some of the shoulds you talked about, like. As I think a few episodes ago.
Right.
Now.
Somebody asked me like, why do I always say should when I was like in 7th grade or something? And so I was like, oh, that's a problem. Like that's how we talk in our family. You should be doing this. You should be doing it.
Yeah, we just have strong opinions around how things should or shouldn't be.
Right. Which I think I've left that behind. So I don't feel like I am judging most people when they are in front of me. I don't really care. But I do feel like that is how people perceive me because of like that's the way we were growing up.
Yep,
the opinions were very much happening.
Yep,
even if they weren't being shared to that person, they were happening. So I'm like, okay, everybody is having their own perception in their head, and what is that perception of me? And because I held a certain perception of myself, I was a pretty confident child.
Definitely,
until I wasn't. And so
middle school does that to everybody.
Right. But everybody doesn't have the same level of confidence that I had.
True. This little girl. You couldn't tell her nothing
at all. And so I think that is where when I had a strong perception of myself and then found out that nobody else had that perception of me, that's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Because I think I'm great.
And you are.
But right. And obviously I still think I'm great, but there's now I think I'm great, but this is how people are perceiving that greatness. And so it's like, whoa. Which one is true?
Both
can be true, sure. But I think it's like, but obviously you want people to want to be around you.
Right. And in the most ideal space, you want people to perceive you how you perceive yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where it becomes tricky if the way you perceive yourself is not how anyone else is perceiving you.
Right. You do want to be grounded in you want to be grounded.
Yes. And then when you're being told you're too much, right? Like it's like, okay, well, what's enough?
Right.
What is the middle ground of enough? Because that's not very directive. And it's not also like, what does too much mean? And what am I doing that's wrong to you? Because basically that's what you're telling me is I'm doing something that's wrong.
I feel that. I think you experienced it growing up. I experienced it at work becoming a manager when people would be like, I don't like the way she talks to me. I don't like, she always acts like this job is so easy. But like when I ask people, what did I say? And then they repeat it back. It was like, oh, right. Well, I don't think you get this as much as me, but I get that I'm condescending a lot, which I can be. And sometimes it's on purpose, if I'm being totally honest. Like, again, I think about what I say before I say it. So I've thought about it. So if you feel it a little bit, it's because I wanted you to feel it a little bit. But I had to be mindful of how often I applied that and knowing that everybody's different. because we come from a family where we just say it how it is.
And if you need some clarity, ask.
Amen. That used to be my thing. If you don't know what I meant by that, please ask me, because I will tell you.
Yeah. But I think we're getting off here. How do we now shift our inner critic into something that is helpful to us? And for you guys too, like, how do you check in? Ask yourself, what is your inner soundtrack, right?
Right.
Is it something that is lifting you up? Was it something you play for your friend if you're trying to hype them up? Or is this something that you would be like,
right. I mean, I know mine is definitely full of fear and doubt and comparison, like wondering if I'm where I'm supposed to be, wondering if I'm doing this right, wondering if I'm being perceived the way I want to be perceived. And so it can definitely get loud. It can definitely get loud.
Yeah. And I feel like turning down the noise, like, how do you do that? Do you stop and pause and recognize when you are the one blocking yourself from the life you want or the world you want to see? I think with myself, I had to start asking myself, okay, people claim you're mean or you're too much. What are the actual actions that you're doing? Like, what are the things that you're saying? You can own when you said something that was maybe too far and go back and be like, oh, I realized I thought about this and this is what I meant. Even if they don't call you out, like that is something I can do to not
like
proactively, but also to not sit and dwell on it, because I, at the end of the day, know my intentions. So I can hype myself up as in I'm a good person and I deserve it all. And I can also acknowledge when I'm wrong and do something about it. Like, I don't have to sit in this, like, woe is me pity party.
Not her pointing at me for pity party.
Sorry. I can do something. That's all I'm trying to say. And that's where I can hype myself up. Or if there's something that I want and I decide I want it and that's it, I deserve it.
Yeah.
And that's just it. Like, I don't have to justify, like, you need to do these things, then you can have it. Or you need to meet this benchmark and then I can have it.
Right. If you want it, go get it.
Yeah.
It's yours.
It's mine.
I feel that. Yeah. And I think I in adulthood had to learn to come down from my main character energy because I'm actually average.
But I guess maybe in recognizing that everyone is, like, we're all living a life and all having our own struggles, and you're still a main character, even if, like, you're doing the same thing as everyone else.
Yeah. And I think I also spend way too much time on social media, which can sometimes skew the perception I have of, like, what I'm supposed to be doing or what it means to be a main character at this stage in life. I feel like I knew what it meant, and maybe not. We're saying main character because that's, like, today's slang, but, like, I think as a young person, I knew what it meant to hold excellence and be center stage. I was very clear what the benchmarks were, and then you become an adult and it's like, do whatever you want, and I'm like, no, what's the path? Just tell me what to do and I can do that. Whereas you have always been a little bit more of a free spirit, I think.
Yeah, I was always going to do what I wanted. And even though maybe it came off like I was being dismissive, it was more of like, well, y'all don't fuck with what I'm doing anyway, so I'm going to just do what I'm doing. So I think that's where that came from.
I think it's cool, though, that we're both coming back to the middle, right?
Sure, yeah. And I think that's ultimately what life is about, is, like, coming back to self. And so our inner critic is typically keeping us from being our true self, and where we actually feel good and where we actually can show up in the world and see good in the world
and in ourselves.
And in ourselves. So I think what's happening is we are coming back to self, which is awesome. Yay.
Yeah. And requires some healing, but we'll get into that in a later episode.
That's actually next episode. We're going to talk about healing versus healed. And the fact of the matter is that sometimes it's a journey. It's a journey. And yeah.
Before we wrap up, it could be helpful just to talk about some ways to flip the script on what your inner critic might be saying. I know one for me is, like, I'm a big on, like, I have to do this, I have to do that. And instead, I could consider what I get to do or what I'm blessed to do. Because at the end of the day, I live a very blessed life. And there are a lot of things that I have access to and have the ability to choose that others would wish for, dream for. And so I need to remember that I get to do things. Like I get to go to work every day. I get to film a podcast with my sister. These aren't things I have to do, but I'm choosing to do it. And so I could be more positive about the things that I get to do.
Definitely. And I think I've said mine throughout, which is just like that I don't deserve this. But I also think people often feel like they mess things up. And so I think another one, you can just flip the script, is just that this was a learning opportunity for me to show up and be different next time. Because nothing is actually a mess up, right? It's all an opportunity to adjust. So I think that is somewhere where I used to lean, and now I can validate myself. And also in that I deserve it all. So play some Kendrick. Believe you deserve it all. And yes,
maybe I'm gonna listen to that after this.
It's so good. But anyways, I think we could wrap it up with our Sister Circle question for today, which is just, what is your theme song? What is your inner critic often telling you? And how can you flip the script on that so that you can show up as the main character and as someone who is able to turn down the noise? And
yeah, it's time for a remix.
Time for a remix. So let us know. Drop your songs in the comments below. And
we look forward to listening.
Yeah. Bye.